Hey there. Have you ever wondered why, some companies scale profitably while others do not, despite them having great products? Well, the answer typically you can find in their business model structure. I'm Roland Umlauf, strategic CFO for tech and innovation companies. In this video series, I'll be talking about business model design, business model innovation. I'll be giving you tools to, diagnose, design, and scale your business model. And in today's video, we will be covering the four foundational pillars that underlie basically every business there. So what are these four pillars, right? We're talking about the value proposition itself. So, what is it that you're offering? Value capture. How are you making money? How are you charging for your offering? Your cost structure and your surrounding ecosystem, right? These are the four pillars. Today will be a brief introduction into those four pillars. We will be doing a deep dive later on in this series where we're going to explore each one of these pillars and their characteristics, plus a bunch of other stuff that will help you, innovate around your business model. Let's start about the value creation pillar, right? This is your core offering, right? This is what you're selling to your customers, what you're offering to your customers, the value you bring. When we think about the value creation pillar, we shouldn't be thinking about technological features or product features, but it's really about the problem that you're solving for your customer, right? Now, how do we design a value proposition? Great value propositions tend to be very precise. They tend to be very targeted, right? The better you're tailoring your value proposition to your clients and your customers in your market, the more likely you are to succeed. Now, what are some of these offerings, for example? So in B2B, some of the value drivers we might see could be things like risk reduction, right? So Salesforce with their CRM solution, what are they really giving to their customers? Well, they're making revenue predictable, right? So it's really about reducing risk. It's adding in this layer of predictability and ability to plan and scale your business, right? So that is their big value proposition. Another one could be, something like cost reductions, or it could be something like revenue enablement, right? Stripe with their checkout solutions, they help you increase checkout conversion ratios. On the value proposition side, really practical tip from my side is, first of all, take your customer's view, right? So whenever you think about the value that you bring, again, don't think about your features, but quantify this value, taking the viewpoint from your customer's side. Be as focused as possible. So work on your segmentation. Don't try to serve everybody. Markets don't tend to be homogeneous, and customers are different. There is no market and no product that is able to serve everybody the same way. When you're building your value proposition, try and, keep it as simple as possible. If you can write it in one sentence or maybe two, then that's great. If you need a full paragraph, you're probably building something that's a little bit too complicated. Second pillar, value capture. Here we're talking about your revenue model. How do you turn all this value that you're creating for your customers? How are you going to turn that into revenue? How are you going to make profit from this? This is about your pricing. It's about your monetization strategy. Now, I'm a pricing expert, right? I work a lot on strategic pricing, and I will be also publishing a full series on pricing. So stay tuned on that. In this series, we're going to touch pricing, but stay tuned for the full pricing series. Key questions on the value capture pillar. Make sure you understand, how you're trying to capture the value. What's the mechanics? So are you going for, a subscription? Are you going for a more usage-based fee or licensing, or is this one-time payment that you're expecting from your customers? These are very, very different, and they have very different dynamics later. So for example, if you're going for usage-based pricing, it's actually going to be a little bit harder to forecast your revenue. Your revenue is not going to be stable over time. So in summer, when everybody's on vacation, you're probably going to make less money, right? But Usage-based pricing tends to also be a little bit better at capturing the right amount of value from a very, heterogeneous type of customer pool. So if your customers are very, very different and they're generating different type of usage from your product, it's probably better to go with a usage-based approach than charging the same subscription fee to everybody. The other question I would ask is, what are my actual revenue streams? How many of them are there? Think about, I don't know, Zoom, right? Zoom has a freemium model on one side, and on the other side, they have an enterprise plan. Make sure you understand how you're, capturing your profit. If you're not able to capture any kind of, profit or revenue, then your business obviously is not as sustainable as it should be, right? In terms of practical tips, try and think about your revenue streams, list them out. If you have more than two, your proposal is probably a little bit complex, especially early on. For mature companies, they have, a multitude of revenue streams. But if you're just starting out, try and focus on something that, really moves the needle and forget about, making a little bit extra here and there. Now, the third pillar here is our cost architecture, right? So this is about understanding our expenses, understanding the scalability of the business, and how do these costs behave as we start to grow into a bigger and bigger company. When it comes to costs, basically there are only two types of costs, right? So one is fixed costs. So these are your salaries and overhead, your rent, etc. And then you have your variable cost. This is cost that you incur when you're actually selling something to a customer. So let's think about the SaaS company. The variable cost here could be, your support cost. It could be your cloud hosting cost. Another important cost, obviously for SaaS or any kind of business really, is how much does it cost me to attract a customer in the first place, right? So what's my cost of acquisition? This is really, really important also when you're starting to model out, because you need to, put that money on the table first in order to get a customer to buy your service. And obviously you want to recover this initial investment that you're making into growing your business as early as possible in order to, not running out of money. When it comes to, the cost component in the business model context, what I typically do is I think about the unit economics first. So what do I mean by unit economics? This is, the amount of money that you're making from every customer, from every sale, right? So what I'm mapping out here is basically the income you're generating from a customer versus the cost that is related to that specific sale or to maintaining that customer. Now you want to map that out over the lifetime of the customer contract, and you want to understand whether or not you're actually making money on each and every sale. If you're not profitable on your unit economics, you're going to lose money no matter what, and you will never be successful, right? So the more you're selling, the more money you would be losing. So it is super important that you get your unit economics nailed down. You can understand, this is the amount of money I make on every sale. And the interesting thing is, if I'm making, a certain amount per sale, and then I multiply that with a certain volume that I'm expecting, am I able to generate enough money in order to cover my fixed cost, right? Or if I turn this around and I say, hey, I know my fixed cost, how many units do I actually need to sell in order to, break even? And this gives me an interesting sense check, right, on comparing that to market size, making some projections on, what's the market share that I actually need in order to be, at break even? Is this actually really realistic, right? So for me, the unit economics, this is really the core on the modeling. And then, you're doing a rough estimation on your fixed cost. Keep it simple and, just multiply it out and see if you're actually ever going to be breaking even on your cost structure, or if you need to redesign something. Also, a word on scalability of the business model, right? Some models scale better than others. And this has a lot to do, again, with your variable cost structure versus your fixed cost structure. So if you have a business model that's, people loaded, so things like professional services, consulting, something like that, they don't tend to scale very well from a cost point of view because you need additional people every time you want to grow. You have this extra cost, you have this extra headcount, and that cost is not going to, reduce or diminish. On the other hand, if you're looking at, software or, a SaaS company, other than, the added support cost that you're incurring with each client, you're not going to have, massive additional costs every time you're selling something. You have some initial R&D costs to develop your product and, bring it to market, obviously, and you have your acquisition costs, but then it doesn't cost you a ton to really operate this and deliver it to the customers. So those type of businesses tend to be much more scalable from a cost perspective than businesses that have a big cost component on every sale. Another one that has obviously large cost per sale is hardware. Obviously, with hardware, you're having certain, we call it economies of scale, where it is cheaper to make, 10,000 units than to make 100 units. So your cost of production is eventually going to go down as you're increasing volume, but you're still going to incur cost every time you're making a sale. If you have a professional services type of model or people-loaded model, one thing you can think about is if there is anything you can do to productize these repeatable workflows, for examples, and create these economies of scale. Now, another thing on the cost side, obviously, that we should be talking about is this whole idea of Capex versus Opex, as we call it in finance. So it's capital expenditure versus operating expenditure. Basically, buying stuff or renting stuff. A very good example here is data centers, right? If I'm a software company, does it make sense for me to own my data center? Or does it make sense to, go with Amazon or whoever and just have a cloud computing external that I am basically renting, right? Where it becomes Opex. Now, a good, benchmark here would be, for example, to not try and own any kind of data center unless you really have above 60% of utilization of that specific center. Obviously, there are other considerations that can be technical, that can be, scalability, etc. And the big financial consideration, obviously, is do you have enough money upfront to make these investments? How does your financing look like? On the cost side, basically the practical tip would be, hey, take a look at your cost projections, identify the main drivers, just keep it simple. Don't, try to project, I don't know, cost of drinking water. But identify your main cost components, map them out, and then think about how they scale with growth, right? Are these costs going to be relatively flat, or are they going to increase with the size of your company and the amount of sales that you're having? The fourth pillar is really, it's about the ecosystem, right? So it's everything that is around your company. So these are your partners, your resellers, your, integrations. First of all, who are they? Do I have any kind of dependencies on partnerships? Or, do I need a certain sales channel in order to reach my customers, or am I planning to do this direct, etc.? So integrations, for example, integrations are great because they allow you to easily reach a broader customer base. They tend to make your product super sticky. They tend to reduce churn. So it's great to have integrations. At the same time, if you are adding too many integrations in and they really are not being used as much as that, does it make sense to spend this amount of time and money and then you have 20 users using this integration? Maybe it's something that, it doesn't make as much sense, right? Same goes for resellers. Resellers and channels in general are fantastic to help you reach a broad market very, very quickly without having to make that extra investment into a sales force. So they help you cut your cost of acquisition. They help you cut upfront investment. But then again, the resellers, they want to take a cut. It's not unusual for them to take between 20 and 40% of your revenue as a cut, depending on the industry, obviously. Generally, in partnerships, over reliance on one specific partner to as a lever for your success is going to be a significant additional risk for you. So, make sure that you're not too focused on a specific partner or a specific channel reseller, etc. In terms of practical tips, I would recommend that you list your top 3 or top 5 ecosystem partners. Analyze how dependent you really are on these, and I don't mean this in terms of nice to have, they might help me scale. But I'm more talking about really a fundamental reliance on these ecosystem partners, right? So imagine if they go away, is the whole thing just going to fall apart? Or are you still going to be able to work and survive as a business? Benchmark your partnerships on an ongoing basis, right? Track your partner attached revenue, for example, if these are resellers. A lot of times what happens is, you spend a ton of money and a ton of time on, finding these partners, building up the relationships, writing out the contracts, maintaining the partner, training the partner, and then they basically don't make the effort you were expecting from them. So make sure you track this and you sense check your partnerships once in a while, and just get rid of the partners that don't work out for you. How to really build your business model practically? What I would recommend that you do is that you start out with the business model canvas that was published by Alex Osterwalder and the guys at Strategizer. Now, if you've never heard of this or you don't know how to find it, I am publishing a link in the comments section. So check this out, go through the canvas and spend some significant amount of time on, really each one of these boxes. The strategizer model has a bunch more information than, the 4 pillars. The 4 pillars kind of abstract on top of the strategizer model, and they kind of put the economics against the strategizer model. But to cover the basis of the business model, I would recommend that you go through this. So here they're talking about, what's your customer acquisition strategy? Is there any channel in the middle? The value proposition itself is mapped out really, really nicely. And actually, they have a separate canvas that is only focusing on the value proposition portion, which is fantastic, right? So I would also highly recommend that you do the value proposition canvas. Once you've done your work going through the business model canvas, you can start working on the 4 pillars. And here I'm actually going to give you a takeaway exercise that I call the X-ray template. What I'm asking you to do here is to basically go through the 4 pillars and do a short exercise on each. For the value prop, just write it out in 1 sentence, 2 sentences, right? Make it as concise as possible. See if you're able to do this. And again, think in terms of your customers and the value that you're creating for your customers, and not in terms of technological features. Identify your main revenue streams and your monetization mechanics, and think about your pricing strategy here, right? What price point are you looking at? Again, is this subscription? Is this one-off? Is this usage-based? Just kind of write it out. How many different revenue streams do you have? Again, if you have more than 2 in the beginning, I would try and cut out some of those and just keep it as simple as possible. List out your biggest cost items and then think about the scalability. So how does your cost behave with growth? And think about, is there anything you can do about that? If you're having a big cost item that just scales with growth and makes you or limits your scalability in terms of cost efficiency, try and be creative about that. Do you really need to do this in this form, or is there a way to get around this? Can you maybe outsource some of this? List out your key partners, list out your key channels, figure out your dependency on that, and if you have any kind of concentrated risk on one specific partnership that you really need, and see if this is realistic or if there's anything you can do about it. Now, I want to finish today's video with a couple of common pitfalls that I've seen over time. So first one is a misalignment in the value capture itself, charging the wrong way, for example, right? So the idea is, are you charging for seats with your software, right? Or individual users? And this actually doesn't make any sense to your customers. It always helps to understand your customer's business model, but when it comes to pricing, it is absolutely essential. So one of the things that happens a lot is that, you have a customer that has very, very stable income stream and a very, very stable cost structure. Now, that customer is not going to be happy to pay any kind of variable pricing for your products. Another common pitfall I see on business model design is we tend to forget about costs, right? So there are a bunch of hidden costs that typically always get left out, or they're being underestimated. So specifically, when it comes to implementation cost, this happens a lot, or support costs. I would rather conservatively inflate those numbers compared to your gut feeling, because they always tend to be higher than everybody thinks. And then finally, ecosystem reliance. One thing is we think we're super important to these partners and they're, going to make a bunch of money with us. But is this really realistic? How important are you to your partner? Compare the amount of money that, your partners potentially are making with you to the amount of money they're making with, other companies and other providers. So are you actually important to these guys, or is this just something that's, that you will be an afterthought and they will not really focus, because your partners are going to focus on whoever gives them the biggest return on investment on the time and effort that they're spending. So for the closing of this video, I want to, stress that business model design is really your blueprint for success, right? So a good business model design is making it so much more likely for you to succeed, versus a bad business model design basically means that you're going to be struggling on the way and you're probably setting yourself up for failure in the long run, right? Now, next chapter, I want to do a deep dive into the first pillar. So we're going to talk about value proposition design. We're going to talk about, selling outcomes, not features. We're going to look at, your customers' pains and gains, and how we can, maximize the value that you're delivering to your customer. Now, in the meantime, you have the X-ray template in the comment section. So download this, try it out. Leave me some comments, let me know if this has surprised you, if this is something that, is useful for you. And I will see you in the next chapter. Thank you.